Okay, all right, everybody. Happy Thursday. How's it going? I just realized I need some tea. My throat has been doing this like weird summer thing, but we're gonna go with it. It's totally fine. So today's topic is launching with limits. How to set boundaries. Boundaries has been such a topic, such a theme that has been coming across my life personally, people in my lives personally, like it just boundaries, all of that structure, all those rules, all those regulations, all of that figuring out and ebbing and flowing and transitioning and shifting. Because let's be real, I've said it before and I'll say it again, this year has been really intense for people. Really intense. I mean, it's been intense for me. How can it not be intense for you? I'm not the only one feeling this intensity. I know it, right? So part of going through these shifts and going through these transformations and changing these lives to the extent that some of you are really changing your lives and flipping them around is about reestablishing and recognizing your boundaries again, recognizing your worth, recognizing what it is that you actually really want, because many of us are getting an opportunity to start completely fresh, or to at least start from the beginning on some parts of our lives that no longer serve us, and to fall into new aspects of our lives. And that's really exciting, really exciting. But the important thing to remember is boundaries. Ooh, boundaries. So when we talk about boundaries, many of you are thinking and relating it to different things, right? So many of you are relating the idea of boundaries to your workplace. Some of you are relating boundaries to your kids and what that looks like. Some of you are relating your boundaries to dating and consent and what that means and what that looks like. But here's the way. Either way, let me tell you a little bit of a story, because you know, life is a thing. So I've been hearing a lot from people lately the words, "I don't feel seen." Does that resonate with some of you? I don't feel seen. How do I get and give at the same time? Because something isn't translating properly, something isn't working, and I am feeling depleted of everything. That's a story. That's a story that some of you are telling me. That's a story that I know I've told myself. I don't feel seen. Why is that? Why don't you feel seen? Why are we saying this? Why are we allowing that to be the state of which we are in and accepting as a normal feeling? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about boundaries. Choosing boundaries isn't easy. Choosing to set those limits and those standards in which we can operate in our lives isn't easy, but it is necessary. Here's the thing, because no one, well, some people, but not a lot of people have the privilege of waking up to an everyday happy, easy life. Really. And even some of those people don't properly appreciate the privilege of which they are currently living in, right? But boundaries goes beyond privilege. Everyone has an opportunity to make choices and to sync and respect and have their boundaries respected, and is deserving of it, no matter who you are, how you wake up, or what you look like. But let me tell you, I did not wake up in this life like this. I mean, let's be real, I was always sassy. That didn't change much, especially for those of you who are watching who have known me for a really long time. That hasn't changed much, but I did not wake up to this easiness. I did not wake up with these boundaries. None of us really have, right? These are learned behaviors. Consent and boundaries are learned behaviors. So if you are being faced with struggling through what that means and what this looks like in your life, that's okay. That's okay. Compassion. Have some compassion for yourself. This is why we're having these conversations, because we need to learn. If we don't have the conversation and if nobody talks to us about it, how are we going to know? Right? Right. So, I have seen some real shit in my life. I have experienced some real shit in my life. I have seen and experienced some trauma. I have been through some really interesting things. I have supported some really awesome people through their journeys in their lives, and I currently do so in my private practice and in other ways. And the difference between how the things that have happened to me and how I choose to move forward is that I no longer let and allow the trauma and the sadness and sorrow and all of those emotions to write my story. I choose those things. We have to choose those things if we want to see an elemental shift in our lives. Let me take that back. I no longer let it write my story, because now what I choose is to allow my boundaries to help me build my story. Boundaries are bridges. They're not walls, right? We're not Donald Trumping all over everybody, right? Boundaries are bridges, and they are bridges that allow us to communicate the limits of access, right? The definition of boundaries, I looked it up. I Googled it, okay? I Googled it. The definition of boundaries is a line that marks the limits. That is the definition. A line that marks the limits. However, when we're talking about personal boundaries, right? We're not talking about map boundaries where they're literal lines. When we're talking about personal boundaries, right? You know that saying, draw a line in the sand? Draw a line in the sand is about setting boundaries. But we can't necessarily draw lines in real life, although I know some of us would really want to, right? But personal boundaries are about setting these kind of imaginary lines. But even though they are imaginary, as in we can't see them physically, we can feel the lines, right? We can feel our boundaries. One person that speaks very clearly and that I admire the most, who speaks about boundaries, is Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown. I mean, talk about goddess amongst goddesses. Brené Brown says, and I'm going to read the quote because I don't want to get it right. I want to get it right, sorry. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves. Even when we risk disappointing others. And that's part of the risk of a boundary, isn't it? It is part of the risk. Because boundaries, like I've already said, is about the line that marks the limits. But this topic, this video that we're talking about is about how we launch into our limits, right? Because we can successfully launch into our lives and embrace this living process and launch into our limits in a very loving and passionate and wonderful and healthy way that really allows us to feel good and the people around us to respond positively to us. So boundaries are messages, whether we are relaying them to people or whether people are relaying them to us. Boundaries say, I know myself. I am aware of myself. And I am aware of my capacity to show up for me first and then for others. That is what boundaries say. So when someone sets a boundary, It is about acknowledging the fact that they are saying to you, I know myself and I have this awareness and I need you to please respect that. Big shout out, rest in power to Aretha Franklin. When I say respect today, that's who I'm thinking of. A very strong, powerful, and beautiful goddess. Rest in power, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. But that song is all about boundaries a little bit, isn't it? Right? How do you respect me? How do you respect me in all parts of my life? So what do boundaries look like, right? Think about it. What do boundaries look like to you and your life? So to some of us, boundaries is about saying no to sex or saying no to things that we don't want to do sexually or intimately or in our relationships. Boundaries can also look like saying no to physical touch, right? It can very much look like that. Give me 1 second. My meditation went off. There's other people here. All right, we're back. So, boundaries, what do they look like? Boundaries can also look like saying no to touch. We talked about that. Have you ever walked into a crowd of people and someone comes out and they're like, oh, hi, and they go, like, they automatically kind of go for the hug? Now, there's some people, yes, that you establish that wonderful dynamic with, but even sometimes some of those people, right, you have a right to say, no, thank you, right? Or like, hey, how's it going? But put that boundary up about not wanting to be touched. Not everybody wants to be hugged all the time. I get it. You want to love and light everybody around you. I totally get it, right? Love and light, all of that stuff. However, sometimes I don't want your love and I don't need your light. I need you to do that over there and let me meet you halfway. So before you touch someone, before you hug someone, right? One of the most powerful things you can say, is to ask. You can do is to ask. Ask them, hey, I'd like to give you a hug. Hey, can I hug you? Hey, are you open to a hug or some touch right now, right? Boundaries can also look like about sharing chores with your partner, right? About discussing and talking about the limits of your energy levels in any specific day, week, month, or just the relationship in general, right? Boundaries also looks like asking questions and clarifications so that you become better informed. Boundaries also looks like when you have a disagreement. How many of you have had a disagreement? And I'm a sassy pants, so I have been known to get quite hot-headed, as I'm sure some of you can as well. However, sometimes when I'm feeling like that, right, and I have that awareness, when I'm feeling that kind of like, ooh, that sassiness just kind of bubble through me and not in a cute way, right, I have to say to people, I need a moment. I need some space. Because once again, boundaries aren't about you. I posted on my Instagram this morning, right? Boundaries are how I exhibit love to myself so that I can better show up for me, so that I can be better present for all of us who are here. Because we need boundaries. We need them for our own sanity. Many of us currently function on a codependent level, where we're feeling confused, where we're asking people to tell us how we're feeling, when we are afraid to face the emotions that we really are feeling. I'm going to do a video on codependency, most likely next week, so stay tuned. However, when it comes to boundaries, they are necessary. It's funny, I had this conversation with my best friend, my sister, one of my soulmates in my life. And as you can imagine, you know, I have a lot of energy. So I'm always reaching out to my sisters for support and for love, and you know, just bouncing ideas around, because they are my everything. They are my team. They are my chosen family. They really are everything. And one of my best friends said to me earlier this summer, and she said to me, she said, I can't right now. She's like, I know that I have been this person for you, but right now I can't. And I need to take a step back from you asking me these questions, or for you giving me this type of attention. And I took a breath and I said, okay, with love and true love. Because I knew in that moment, she wasn't doing that because she didn't want to hear me, and she wasn't saying that because she didn't want to see me, because I know our relationship. I know she hears me and she sees me clearer than anyone on this planet. But I knew when she said, I can't right now, she was saying that and doing that because she needed to take that step back, because she needed to reassert herself so that she could show up for me, because that's what boundaries are. We've talked about this. So why then do we feel guilty in setting them? Because then I talked to her. I mean, we still talked. She's my best friend. We definitely still talk, right? There was just some limits to some of our conversations, temporarily speaking. So then I talked to her this week, and you know what she said to me? She said, thank you. She said, I had this like feeling in my gut. I had this like rock in my stomach that if I said to you, I can't right now, what that would mean for our friendship. And I said, my love, I said, I would not be your sister. I would not be your friend if I didn't see you in the same way that you see me. This would not be a real thing if when you said to me, I have had enough and I need space, if I did not respect that and honor that and know that that was you taking care of yourself, that it was not about me. I have people. I got a lot of them, right? And sometimes we need to take a step back from ourselves on people, right? This whole idea of social media and phones and everything has made this like need for urgency. And many of us are kind of like working through this like need for like urgency or immediate gratification, or like someone texts you and you have to text back right away. That drives me crazy. It drives me crazy that we have this this need to have to respond. But we can choose better than that, right? So when I'm in the presence of someone, when I'm at dinner with someone, when I'm hanging out with someone, right? My phone rarely comes out. I mean, sometimes it does because it's fun and it depends on the environment, but it rarely comes out because my presence is my boundary to not only me, but in terms of respecting you and your time. So if somebody texts me and they text me a million different things, because I turn all my notifications off and I'm on silent, and that's my boundary, because I can't be there and at people's beck and call all the time. It's just not healthy, and it's not sane, and it would make me crazy, like it would make you crazy. So what are some ways that you can start to incorporate boundaries in your life? Just little things. But before I get to tips on how to set them, I want to talk about, why do we feel guilty in setting these boundaries? Why do we feel guilty in setting boundaries? Well, it's because you don't want to be a bitch, really. Like, let's just be honest about that, right? No one wants to be that mean person. No one wants to be the person that defines things for whatever reason, right? Everyone wants everyone to be happy. Everyone wants everybody to be happy and things to go well, right? Because we have enough stress in our lives, even if it is at our own expense. Does that sound familiar? Because some of us choose to take on more than we need or that we can, even at our own expense. And that, my friends, is not doing you any favors. So when you are on vacation, be on vacation. Don't check emails. When you are at to dinner with your partner, right? Put your phone down or away or not even on the table. When your friend is talking to you and sharing some of the deepest stuff that they're going through, be present for them. And if you are being triggered, be honest about those triggers and say, I also can't, but I respect and honor what it is that you're going through, but I can't hold that space. And that's okay. So tips for setting them. I came up with 5. 5 tips for setting boundaries in your life. What do they look like? Okay, here we go. Number 1. Number 1 is define what is most important in your life. Define what is most important. When I ask people that, a lot of people give me like this blank stare. They're like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's important in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, that's step 1. Let's do that first, right? So define what is most important in your life. Is it time? Is it money? Is it your feelings? Is it your safety? Think of all of those things as treasures. All of those things as treasures. Treasures that you get to hold in the chest of your heart, right? In your chest. In your heart chest. Sorry, I just came up with that one. I'm giggling a little bit about it. That was a good one. Hey, okay? Anyways, think of all of those things as treasures in your heart chest. How do you want others to treat those treasures? How would you treat those treasures? So first of all, define what that is most important. Tip number 2 to setting boundaries. Practice. And practice baby no's. Baby no's, like little ones. We don't have to say no to the whole world right now. We don't have to say yes to the whole world right now. But we need to practice saying our yeses and nos way more often than we allow ourselves to. So first, start with people who kind of get you. Start with people who kind of no matter what will understand that you're in this practice. But first of all, communicate that this is what you're trying to practice. So first of all, say, hey, I'm trying to practice some boundaries here. So I'd like to have a conversation with you, and I'd also be open to some feedback. And this is a conversation, this is a dialogue. So there's 2 different ways that this can go. So start first by practicing some baby no's with your friends, for example. So if there's something that may have rubbed you the wrong way, but it's not really a big deal in life, but you're trying to practice some of your baby no's, right? Talk about it. Get it off your chest. Say the things that scare you the most, because often the things that scare you the most is where the truth in your boundaries lie. The freedom to disagree is true intimacy. And one of my boundaries in my life, that is, if you are going to be in my circle, in my circle of trust, true intimacy needs to exist. That's just my boundary. So being able to disagree, being able to say no, or being able to say hell yes is a value that I truly appreciate in my friendships. So practice with your baby no's. Number 3, assess your power. Boundaries are all about power and the power exchange and the power dynamics we have within ourselves and within other people around us. So assessing your power is about recognizing that your feelings of shame, your feelings of fear, your feelings of guilt are all knowings, are all emotions that are actually telling you that you may be doing something right, that you may actually be setting proper boundaries. So if you're feeling kind of guilty about boundaries, you may actually be on the path to saying or doing something that you need to be doing, which is setting the boundary. So assess your power, that sometimes in setting those boundaries, at first we are going to feel a little bit uneasy, right? But the more we practice them, the more that we assess and take a second to step back and reflect on these disagreeable feelings that we may be having, is just an awakening and a realization that these may be the things that we need to be doing. Step number 4, or tip number 4. This is a fun one. Personality preferences. Okay, we're not all gonna get along all the time. We're not all gonna agree all the time. That's just life. There are, 7 billion people on this planet? I am not gonna agree with every single person on this planet, but I will respect everyone's boundary. But personality preferences is about, and setting these boundaries is about recognizing that point, is about recognizing that everyone comes from a different journey. Everyone is on a different journey. Everyone has different things that are impacting them on a daily basis. The living process is really alive in every single one of us. So recognizing personality preferences is about saying it is okay to let people go. Not everyone is meant to be our friend forever. Not everyone is meant to be in our lives forever. A season, a reason, a lesson, and a growth. It is about respecting my limits, respecting your limits, and finding out what that means to me and what that means to our relationship. So sometimes setting a boundary is about recognizing the personality preferences, and that sometimes we do need to let people go who are no longer feeding us in a way that we require at this time. Tip number 5. Go slow. So as we're practicing, as you're defining what is most important to you, as you're practicing your baby knows, as you're assessing your power, as you're being aware of personality preferences, this is a process that needs to go and move slowly. Some of you, like I said at the beginning of this video, are really experiencing a big shift and a big transition in life, in your life. Right? Some of these choices you wanted to make, some of these choices you didn't want to make, but they had to be, right? So go slowly. The pendulum is swinging really deeply for some of us right now. We are feeling some really extreme emotions. So some of us are feeling some really extreme frustrations and anger and sadness. And some of us are feeling some really intense happiness and joy and pleasure. And it's all beautiful. It's all really quite wonderful. However, a key and a tip to making and asserting strong boundaries is to know that in these times of extreme emotions, when your pendulum is swinging, that may not be the time to be making big, important, or really any decisions. Because sometimes, right, when we're in these extreme emotions, we're not necessarily clear. We're not defining what's important. We're not practicing. We're not in our practice. We're not assessing our power, and we're not recognizing the personality preferences that are around us. So remember to go slow and to not make decisions when you are experiencing an extreme emotion, whether that is frustration and anger and sadness or whatever that is, or happiness and elation and pleasure. Get clear. Define and know what is most important. So we need these boundaries. These boundaries are bridges, not walls in relationships and not walls to ourselves. They are bridges to allow us to move more powerfully, more clearly, and stronger in this life. Practice your yes and no's, my friends. I love you guys so much. Thank you. If you have any questions, shoot them down in the comments. This group, these conversations that we're doing, I want this to be interactive. I want us to talk with each other and learn from one another. That is the beauty of this community. I love you, my goddesses, so, so much. And I thank you for showing up for me. Mwah. Bye. Have the most beautiful and blessed day with gratitude.